I will like to do the honors, and I take immense pride in introducing both of you. Latha is the Vice President and Head of the Technical Center India at Continental Automotive. She's a certified coach and an influential leader in the automotive industry. She serves as the Executive Council member of the Women in Leadership Forum and is a member of the NASSCOM ER&D Council. Latha also finds herself on various university forums where she provides valuable guidance to different universities and the students therein. Latha, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Sonia. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Next, I have Vinod Philip, who forms the second part of the member who I have on this conversation. Vinod has been a member of the executive board of Siemens Energy since October 2022. He's also the chief executive officer for wind power business Siemens Gamesa and is based out of Madrid, Spain. Since Siemens Energy spin-off in 2020, Vinod has been pivotal in shaping its strategic direction as it transforms to meet the growing global demands for sustainable, affordable, as well as reliable energy. Prior to his role on the board as CTO and Global Functions EVP, he was also the head of strategy for Siemens Energy. Vinod, I have seen you, I've met you in various forums, and I can't thank you enough for spending your time and sharing your thoughts today.
Very much, Sonia. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much. So the discussion that we have today is on what I feel is a very simple topic when you look at it as a title or as a headline. We're talking about nurturing growth in the modern workplace. A very simple line. But as I have looked into the topic, as I have looked at the nuances of this particular subject, there are so many different layers to this, right? What I wanted to start with was basically ask you, in your own experiences and as you helm the leadership of your organizations, what does modern workplace look to you? What is it that you're experiencing when I say modern workplace and what you are looking at as the workplace that each of you is very much part of? So maybe I'll start with you, Latha, about your impressions about what it is looking like for you at your side.
It's a very, very interesting question. I would start by saying that it looks very different than how it was before. Yeah, that's a first thing. It's much more flexible. It's much more inclusive, and it is you can also see a lot more passion into the workplace. The other thing which is very clearly what we can observe is the multi-generations that is coming into workplace. Yeah, for example, in Tech Center India, I've got 5,500 engineers, out of which 70% of them are millennials. And you have and then we interact with the rest of the world, probably at our headquarters is in Germany. And when we interact with them, we have very, very senior, 60 plus years who are experts who are interacting with these people. So you feel that, when you are talking about a product development or a project or whatever, you see this multi-generations working on a single purpose. So that's something which was not there maybe, 15, 20 years back. So that's one part. The second thing is that the diversity of thought that comes into the workplace is really amazing because of this, the different generations that we have, the thought process, what they have on the product, on the business, on the workplace itself is completely mind-blowing, I would say. Yeah. So other than that, in terms of the organization itself, there are highlights to it, but there are also some lowlights, because you also have to understand, the leadership has to understand every generation really well. So the HR job and the business job becomes much more complex than in the past, because you need to keep all these generations happy, engaged, and contributing towards a common purpose. So communication and handling this multi-generation workforce, understanding their motivation, understanding their fears, and how do we address that, and how do we carve a career path for each of them, that becomes very critical. So I would say the first look, I think these are the couple of points which come into my mind, but definitely the diversity of thought that brings it is the biggest value that I see in the business because of this multi-generation workforce.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Latha. I think that kind of is a very nice summary of A, what you experience, and B, also with respect to challenges, the various kind of interplays that come in just because of the diversity that comes in. So thank you for sharing that. I'll field the same question to Vinod. And Vinod, to you, do you also see a multi-generational workforce on your side of the world in terms of what you have? Or is it any different with respect to what Latha shared? What are your impressions?
Actually, very much resonant with what Latha was saying. I would kind of add maybe a few more elements, but I think fundamentally, I'm very much in line with what Latha said. I think the first thing is for us as Siemens Energy, because we are present in over 100 countries, we have the added element is also the diversity that comes from organizational cultures. So you have, I think, if I would summarize what Latha said in my words, there is the modern workplace today is complex, it's diverse, it's evolving, and it's hybrid. I think on top of all of this, so at Siemens Energy, we have in the workplace something like 5 generations, because we have in our factories, we have the apprentices who are high school graduates coming in as apprentices in the factory. These are folks who are 18-year-old, 19-year-old men and women. And then on the upper end, we have folks who are in their early 70s in some countries where there is no mandatory retirement age. So people are working into their early 70s. In fact, we have a case where in one country, the oldest employee was 83 years old. So you have between 18 and 83, that's a huge demographic and generational diversity. Then you have countries where the leadership and organizational culture tends to be much more flat and consensus based, like, for example, in the Nordics. On the other hand, you have countries where there is a lot higher degree of hierarchy, which is also part of the culture in the country. Could be, for example, in the Middle East, it's a lot more hierarchical. Or so I think, you have to take into account that there is no single archetype, or there is no single definition of what makes up a workplace. It is a combination of everything what Latha said and the elements that I mentioned. So it is, for me, very complex. But I can only echo what Latha said at the end. At the end of the day, this complexity and this diversity is leading to opportunity because it is cognitively stronger. Because you have these different perspectives, you have these different angles of looking at things. And I think that also is up to, from a leadership point of view, up to us to really cultivate and embrace and exploit this diversity of thought and cognitive diversity.
Yeah, no, brilliant. I especially love the way how you summarized it in seeing it from an opportunity perspective, right? And seeing how that strength comes through, even though there are challenges, even though there's so many differences that are there. Uh, when you spoke about, the culture, you spoke about 5 generations who are there in the workplace at the same time. We're also thinking about nurturing growth, Vinod, right? Now, I was wondering, when we say or when we think about growth in this context, is that definition of growth or succeeding in a workplace as a professional very different across these 5 generations? What is the definition? Do you find that itself has changed quite a bit just from one generation to the other? Any impressions on that, Vinod?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There is a difference, and I think it's not good or bad. It simply is different. So I think if you look at the folks who are coming from the baby boomer generation and around that time, it's a very different work ethic. People over there at that point in time did put work as a priority, and it was really about gaining one's career ambitions and gaining one's progression and growth almost at the expense of everything else. And today, if you look at the generations coming into the workforce, they are looking for a much more balanced and integrated perspective on growth. So they do not want to grow professionally at any cost. They want to be able to grow professionally while at the same time having a certain life outside of work that allows them to have a work-life balance that is different. And they want to work in a company or in a organization that gives them a sense of purpose, so much more purpose driven. So I think this has changed. And then on top of that, if you add the cultural context, in some countries today still, because of the nature of society, growth is much more about vertical development, moving up the ranks, gaining bigger and bigger responsibilities, and that is what is valued. In other cultures, it is monetary. They want to see a monetary improvement in their situation. And in other countries, it's more about other cultures. It's more about horizontal development, where they are not so keen on sacrificing family or sacrificing proximity to their friends and their locations of choice, versus they want to work on projects and work on topics that are different. So I think this is something which is also good from a management point of view, because that gives us a greater set of options to kind of, it's not that one size fits all. So depending on the person, depending on the generation, depending on the culture, we can, if we choose to, create bespoke growth opportunities or growth plans for the people. But that has to be a dialogue between us and the individual concerned.
True, true, true. And as an HR professional myself, it does give you various avenues to think about, different ideas that you could probably grapple with, play along with. But it also adds challenge, right? About how do you do this more uniformly? Which stroke works where is always a question that kind of is not the simplest to answer. Theoretically, it might seem a little simple, but when it comes into the implementation, it does have challenges. So, Latha, if I take that as a perspective, and both of you spoke about multi-generational workforces that are there in your organizations, what has been your approach with respect to nurturing talent, say across different work environments, different work cultures? And of course, you will always have that paradigm of maintaining organization effectiveness, right? That has to be there at the core of it. So any strategies that have worked particularly for you?
I think for us, the mantra has been being inclusive. Yeah, so I think being inclusive will help to get the perspectives from, these different generations, the different communities, the different countries that we work. And then when we develop a product, it is also developed across multiple countries and then put together. So if you, for example, if you have, a product which is developed like that, you need to understand the cultural nuances of where some products are coming from, where some deliveries are coming from, and how the people interact with each other. So communication is the key and inclusivity is the key. And even when we talk about strategy and decision making, inclusivity becomes very important. For example, in my strategy workshop, most of the times I have one millennial who's participating along with the business leaders. Because we might be talking about, for example, if you're talking about something like, rewards and incentives, it's not the leadership who have to decide what is the reward for maybe a new person who is coming into the organization, right? So you need to be inclusive. So how do you get these practices? So we do a lot of reverse mentoring for the senior leadership. We also include the youngsters into these, the different projects that we do, so that it's not that they are just observers, but they also give their valuable suggestions and how they look at certain problems. And I can tell you, it has been really insightful to work with some of them, because their ideas have been brilliant. And probably, if the same age group we had sat together, we would never get into those kind of ideas. At the same time, as you told, nurturing is a challenge, especially for certain group of people where, they don't like to stick to one topic. Some of the new generations, they like to hop on topics, right? And when we do a topic like product development, you need deep expertise into the topic. So how do you actually keep them motivated into the topic? How do you even get them mentored by an aging population, maybe across the globe, maybe in Europe, who can mentor them, who can guide them to do product development, right? So there are, for example, we work with a very strong expert career path network. And, and this is basically to choose an expert. There's no age. It's basically the experience and it's an interview panel where we have people, there's a global panel which will select the people based on the expertise. And these experts are kind of nurtured and they actually form the backbone of the organization, and they get access to different mentors, they get access to different other organizations, other business areas. They understand business, they understand products, so it helps them to develop products much better. Yeah, other thing is definitely compensation is a topic that we need to look into. So we do have different kind of compensation scheme for the key players, for the niche skills that they bring in, for the domain expertise that they bring in. So there are different buckets in which we have to use the compensation also. And yeah, we know touched upon it. It is also the purpose, right? So what's the purpose which is binding all these communities together? And I would say for automotive, it's relatively easy to tell that purpose because, for example, in an automotive industry, if you look at it, there are three elements which drive the industry. One is the safety, second is the joy of use, and the third is the ease of use. And if you look at safety, we do have a vision, what we call as Vision Zero, which is zero fatalities, zero injuries, and zero accidents. So all the set of people who work on the safety aspect, they are so proud that they are saving human lives. So that's the purpose which you can connect. And similarly, when we are talking about any other features, for example, autonomous driving, infotainment, and many other topics, they always feel that they are trying to make human lives better. And that's a purpose with all generations connect to. And that's something which we emphasize very regularly in our town halls, in our communication. What's the purpose? And what can you do to make the lives better? How can you make the world better, right? So some of these elements, if you bring together, I feel that, you have a very good environment to nurture talent, along with the standard HR processes of, assessments and promotions, and, the incentives and so on. But very important is, how do you bring that enthusiasm into the organization to drive towards a common purpose, to look towards something and build something together. I would say co-create something together with the different generations, with the different cultural communities that across the globe. Yeah.